is the WrestleBread Podcast, bringing you the latest news, recaps, and analysis of AEW and WWE. Get the unique perspective from a wrestling fan of over 25 years. Here's your host, Jaydee.
What's going on, guys? This is Jaydee here, and this is episode 31 of the WrestleBread Podcast. Now, we had a pretty good weekend of wrestling with NXT Takeover and Survivor Series as well. So I'm just going to go over what all that happened and then find out if my picks was correct, which if you followed me on Twitter, you can see that I was pretty much going for a losing streak here, but unfortunately, I called the title matches correctly. So starting out with NXT TakeOver, we had a pre-show. And on the pre-show, they had Isaiah Swerve Scott going against Angel Garza. Now, I didn't expect this match to start out in the pre-show so early. So I almost missed this match. At the beginning, it was a bit botchy. It seemed like Swerve and even Garza a little bit needed a little bit of rhythm to get going. But this match ended up being pretty good. Angel Garza has so much charisma. Like, he has such a great future ahead of him. I can't wait to see what more he has in store as well. And Swerve is definitely have the, potential to be, you know, a star in WWE. I didn't really watch the, TakeOver, pre-show after that. I kind of switched off. But then I went back to NXT again, and starting out with the main show, we had the women's War Games match, which I kind of figured that we'll get one War Games match to start and the other one would be the main event. So we had the team of Rhea Ripley, Candice LeRae, Tegan Nox, and it was supposed to be Mia Yim, but it ended up being Dakota Kai. During the pre-show, what I missed, Mia Yim was attacked by a mystery person, and ended up going to the hospital. William Regal, I believe it was, asked Rhea Ripley who would be her replacement, and she told Dakota Kai that she would be the replacement. So it was those four going against Shayna Baszler, Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, and Kaylee Ray. Now, this was a very good War Games. Like I had said in previous episode, I'm very glad that they didn't really make they made a big deal, but not a big deal like we've seen on the main roster whenever there's a first women's. When there was the first women's Royal Rumble and Evolution, they kind of brought all the women in the ring and kind of made it very, informal, and it really didn't, I wouldn't say gel well, but they made a bigger spectacle out of it than what it really should have. And I really appreciated the way that NXT handled this, women's first, that the escalation between Shayna Baszler and everyone who wanted to take the title off of her and people who had problems with the people who wanted to take the title off of her, it escalated so much that William Regal had no choice but to make it a War Games match. So I like the fact that they did it because that's what the feud called for, not the fact that we have this War Games pay-per-view coming up and we have to do something. So starting out, the two competitors who started out was Io Shirai and Candice LeRae, which was very perfect because they have such good chemistry in the ring together. And they really went to blows. So because Shayna's team won a previous match on the NXT live shows, they were able to be first as far as introducing a new competitor every 3 minutes. So the second person that came out, I believe, was Bianca Belair. And then the second person for Rhea's team was actually Rhea Ripley. So I did find it a bit weird that she was second, but I'm guessing I don't know exactly why, but I was guessing that was more for Bianca Belair, or that she just wanted to, attack Io and Bianca Belair so much that she just decided to take that leadership role and go after them herself. That's when Rhea Ripley started bringing in trash cans into the ring. Of course, the crowd started chanting for tables. Then the next person on Team Shayna to come out was Kaylee Ray. Kaylee Ray started grabbing chairs, and then people started chanting for tables. She went to grab a table, the crowd started to go wild, and then she dropped the table and went back into the cage. So then afterwards, we got the next person to come out was Dakota Kai, and she comes out, she stops, and she turns, and she attacks Tegan Nox. Now, I did call my predictions that maybe Dakota Kai will do a heel turn, and I felt as though it was right for, these War Games match because she wasn't picked for the team. And I felt as though maybe she would have attacked Rhea Ripley or even Tegan Nox, looking at it that you're supposed to be my best friend. You didn't try to get me on the team. We were both injured and, there's more attention on you than it is on me and this, that, and the third. So when she went and turned on Tegan Nox, it was a beautiful moment. And I have to say it was a beautiful moment because her attacks on Tegan Nox was so shocking. She was so aggressive. I mean, to the point that refs tried to pull her off. She pushed them. She even pushed, I don't know if she pushed or she hit William Regal. And she it was a brutal attack. She had Tegan Nox's knee in the opening of the cage, and she took the cage door and started slamming it on Tegan's knee. And Tegan Nox was selling everything perfectly, screaming and hollering. I mean, you would thought it was a murder scene the way it was going on with these two. And you see Rhea Ripley, looking from afar in horror and stuff, and Dakota Kai's yelling at her and everything. But it was beautiful. And Shayna Baszler was just selling it like gold, I love the fact that, she was sitting there laughing and pointing and things like that. And so Dakota Kai was taken, went into the back. Of course, Tegan Nox was too injured to enter the match. And so next thing, it was Shayna Baszler, and she peeked at Tegan Nox and she started to walk gingerly to the ring. She had a pair of handcuffs. Apparently she tried to handcuff Rhea Ripley, but she only got the handcuffs on Rhea's wrist. And this turned into a 4-on-2 match. So you kind of assumed immediately that Shayna Baszler's team was going to win, but I did appreciate the way that the 4-on-2 was done. I would like to call the way that they were attacking the Power Rangers school of fighting. Whereas though, and if you watch Power Rangers growing up, the Power Rangers used to fight the, I think they were called the putties, the guys in the gray suits. You would notice that there was always 10 of them around, but for whatever reason, they attack one by one. And that's exactly what Shayna, Bianca, Io, and Kaylee Ray did. They were attacking one by one. But, Rhea Ripley and Candice LeRae was sitting there, they would take one out and then they would focus on the other. And it was very fluid, and it made a lot of sense where, it wasn't like a John Cena type of moment or a Roman Reigns type of moment where them overcoming was just unbelievable type of thing. Cause it wasn't like their tag teaming between these four ladies would be fluid because this is the first time that all four women were together. So it really wouldn't make sense for the four of them to come out with these great tag team moves or things like that. So I appreciated that the creative or whoever came up with the moveset or, the thinking behind this match, that these four women wasn't coming out with great tag team moves like they were Legion of Doom or something like that. That, this is the first time the four women were coming together, so they were fighting individually instead of fighting as a team. So in the end, Io Shirai, love her, does an insane moonsault off the top of the cage onto Candice LeRae and Bianca Belair. Kaylee Ray, I think she went to jump off the top rope or something like that, and she was hit in the face with a trash can by Rhea Ripley. And then Shayna Baszler come from behind to put Rhea Ripley into her submission. Rhea Ripley, fighting it, trying to, break the hold, started to fade. And right before she fades, she put the other part of the handcuffs on Shayna Baszler. And it was a pretty cool moment where they're both looking at each other, handcuffed. And then Rhea Ripley does her finisher on Shayna Baszler onto a set of chairs, which looked painful as all hell. And Rhea Ripley picked up the victory for her team. And I really liked it. The crowd was into it. It felt vicious enough because of the way that these 8 women feel towards each other. And it was just an awesome match. So next up, we had the triple threat match of Pete Dunne versus Killian Dane versus Damian Priest. And by the way, I was wrong in my previous prediction. I thought Shayna Baszler was going to win. But unfortunately she lost. So in this triple threat match with Dunne, Dane, and Priest, I actually had Damian Priest to win until I realized that the winner was going to face Adam Cole. And I kind of figured it would be Pete Dunne. But I thought that this triple threat match wouldn't be as good because it was following such a hot match like the War Games match. But this was a pretty good triple threat match between these 3 men. And I liked how fluid this match was too. It wasn't like it was one guy on the outside of the ring while these 2 fight, and then this one gets knocked out of the ring, and then these 2 fight. It was more that it was one guy versus 2. So it felt like it was actually a match between 3 people instead of it's these 2 people fighting each other while this one's sleeping in the corner type of thing. I liked Killian Dane when he was in Sanity, but I feel like ever since he's been doing these singles matches, especially very recently, I don't know, it's just something missing from him that's not coming across. Pete Dunne and Damian Priest have really good chemistry in the ring together, and I just felt like Killian Dane was there to possibly, take the fall, and I felt like he would have been more the person that would be on the outside of the ring where Pete Dunne and Damian Priest would have been fighting. But in the end, Pete Dunne won, which I kind of figured since there is the stipulation whoever wins goes against Adam Cole at Survivor Series. So the next match after that was Matt Riddle versus Finn Balor. Pretty good match. I would say though, surprisingly, this match wasn't as I had high expectations for this match because Matt Riddle is really good and Finn Balor is really good. So I don't know if it was so much as ring rust with Finn Balor because he was off for a couple of months, but I don't know. It just felt like it was a good match, but it wasn't as great as I would thought it would be. Of course, there were spots, things like that. Matt Riddle did a spear and it's called a bro hammer, but of course it's a jackhammer. So I kind of took that it was a dig at Goldberg. So, but then I realized I think it may be possibly part of his actual moveset now. But this match was pretty good. But like I said, it didn't really hold up to the high standard that I had for these 2. Because with other people they put on good matches. So I'm just going to maybe chalk it up that it was more that Finn Balor really need to get back into the swing of things. And I'm hoping once Johnny Gargano is, good enough to return that the Finn Balor versus Johnny Gargano, the high standard that I have for that match will, definitely be, the expectations I have for that match will be met. So then we have the main event. The Undisputed Era versus Tommaso Ciampa, Keith Lee, Dominik Dijakovic, and a mystery partner. And a lot of people were saying who it possibly could be. People were saying John Morrison, maybe it's KO, maybe it's Johnny Gargano, maybe it's Velveteen Dream, maybe it could be Seth Rollins, who knows. But this match was also done very nicely. Undisputed Era was in the last War Games that was pretty vicious. I don't know how any of these 8 men were, able to compete or do anything the following night. This match also, was a bit brutal. Not as, well, it was just as brutal, if not more, than the women's match. We got tables in this match. Keith Lee is a superstar, I have to say. Between, this match on TakeOver and then what he did at Survivor Series in the week previously. Like I said, ever since NXT Live been on USA, he really has grown, and it's what I kind of expected would happen. Cause I really wasn't feeling him when he first came around. I always felt like there was something missing, that it was just like a little, like, he didn't have like that oomph to him. And since, since NXT has been on USA, he has really it felt like he's grown, it felt like his character has, I guess I could say depth to it, because he's not just, this big guy who can do these moves, stuff like that. I don't know. It felt like he kind of gives me like almost Vader type vibes, the big guy that can, do these amazing moves and kind of like wows you in the ring. But he was pretty good in this match. Dominic, of course, Feast Your Eyes was pretty good. Tommaso Ciampa, always. The Undisputed Era. Adam Cole came in last. He brought in oh my gosh, maybe 6 tables or something. So they all 7 of them get into the ring. They start going after each other. There was a lot of cool spots. Bobby Fish nearly died, early on. But then the countdown began for that mystery person for Team Ciampa. The countdown went and there was nothing. And it was a very cool shot that they had in the ring where you see, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish and Roderick Strong looking at the ramp, and you see Kyle says, oh, there's nobody's coming to help them. And then next thing you know, you hear KO's music. And I said, well played, NXT. That was very well played. The crowd went crazy. Adam Cole looked in shock. And it was so nice to see Kevin Owens come back to NXT, because it really wasn't much for him to do on the main roster, especially after the whole Shane McMahon thing and, him really building up, becoming a babyface versus Shane McMahon. And after Shane McMahon has gone, it really wasn't that much for him to do. He really didn't have someone to have a hot feud with. So it was very good to have him come back to NXT, because I feel like he fits more with an indie type crowd than he does with the main roster. Because with the main roster, you have to have these strict heels or these strict faces. And I feel like KO is more both. That he is that type of heel that you like, but he can also be a face too. He can say something funny. It's kind of hard to describe it. I guess a tweener, that as people say. But I feel as though he's more right for NXT. So I know there's people that are upset that some of the people are coming from the main roster down to NXT, but I feel like it can happen for certain people because it fits right. People like Finn Balor, KO, like I said, they're the type of people that are right for NXT. Not saying that, they should never go up to the main roster. But I feel like they're trying to build NXT as this third brand versus this development center. So KO comes out, big pop, and you can tell he was loving it. He gets into the ring, starts attacking everyone. And there is this spot where he, goes over to the crowd and he's looking at the crowd. Of course, him and Adam Cole are looking at each other. Adam Cole puts up the Undisputed Era sign. KO, it seemed like he wanted KO to join Undisputed Era. KO looks at his hands, of course, does a stunner. And then it was maybe a minute or two after that, you just see Kevin Owens gets on the ropes and starts shaking the cage to really you can tell he's so fired up to be in front of this crowd because it felt right. Of course, I questioned what would happen at Survivor Series because Kevin Owens is on Team Raw for the men's elimination match, 5 versus 5 versus 5. But, I figure we'll answer that question on Sunday. So Kevin Owens comes in and puts on a good show. Tommaso Ciampa, the Undisputed Era. And then there was these spots towards the end where we had Keith Lee, who put I think it was Bobby Fish through a table. Kyle O'Reilly had went through a table as well. I think it was Roderick Strong who took the I think it was a frog splash from Kevin Owens. And then meanwhile, I'm seeing Tommaso Ciampa and Adam Cole both on top of the cage. And I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, they're about to, do this spot and nearly die. So you see, after everyone is laid out, you see Tommaso Ciampa and Adam Cole hitting each other top of the ramp. And you see Tommaso Ciampa grab Adam Cole, puts him on his back and, gets his balance. I mean, he was scaring me, holding on to try to get his balance. You see the two tables below. Of course, they both fall onto the table. It looked very bad. And Tommaso Ciampa wins the match. And it was just one of those moments, like, I don't know how either of these men are going to make it to Survivor Series. Like, I really appreciate, when wrestlers put their bodies on the line, but it's like, man, I don't want you to have, like, broken ribs and unable to breathe just because you want to put on a show. Like, please don't die. Please don't get injured. Things like that. The interesting thing was, after this spot, you see the camera cut to a woman in the crowd. And I was like, is that Britt Baker? And even Mauro Ronaldo mentions that, Britt Baker, Adam Cole's girlfriend, looking very concerned. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I know that sometimes she's at the shows with him and stuff like that. But of course, I think that this is all before AEW. I don't know if they, I don't think they ever shown her on screen before, AEW was formed. So the fact that they did that, I was like, whoa, that's a pretty dick move. Like, I understand that, it's your competition, but we all know that she's there because of Adam Cole. Like, why you show her on the screen to be like, oh, look who we got here in the crowd and, who brought a ticket for our show. The rumor is that, Triple H mentioned it, I believe on the, live stream after Takeover, that, the person in production truck didn't know who Britt Baker was. They just cut the camera to a woman who looked very concerned, and it just happened to be her. And that they had no choice but to mention who she was. And I think he either said something to her personally after it all or something like that. And he was like, I don't think that, she'll, we didn't do it to like for her to get into any type of trouble or something like that. It's like, okay. But it was just very, weird, that they cut to her like that. Even the fact that they mentioned her on camera, but they didn't mention that she's from AEW or something. They mentioned that she's Adam Cole's girlfriend, Britt Baker. So just very interesting that happened. But that was the end of NXT Takeover. And then we go on to Survivor Series. Now, as far as the Survivor Series, the pre-show, I was pretty much back and forth. I was trying to catch matches because I figured for this pre-show to be 2 hours long, there had to be more matches that they didn't announce. And I hate when WWE does this, where they don't announce like a good couple of days beforehand what these matches will be, that they just kind of pop up. But during the Takeover show, I had it on my phone because I was watching my Cowboys get slaughtered by Tom Brady. Not really slaughtered. I mean, I knew they were going to lose this game because of the weather and the fact that, we really don't have that good of a quarterback. I'll say it. But I expect the game to go the way it did. I know a lot of people probably heard about the tripping penalty. It has come out afterwards that the NFL said the ref shouldn't have made that call and stuff like that. So now everyone's playing this what if game. And I don't know. To me, it's like, we were going against Tom Brady. If we had made a touchdown, Tom Brady would have had maybe at least 2 minutes left to put up another touchdown. Cause I forgot who had talked to him, but they were talking to both quarterbacks about the weather. they asked Tom Brady what he thinks about the weather. He was like, oh, it's a nice day. And, it's a nice day in Foxborough, where Dak was like kind of confused. But the thing that made me mad, and I know I'm going on a tangent, but the thing that made me mad about this game is that you know the weather beforehand. You should have seen that it was going to be 40 degrees, windy, and raining. But yet Dak Prescott didn't wear gloves for like the first half, and decided after the first half, maybe I should put on gloves because, it's raining and the ball is wet. And I know that my team I don't feel like my team is that good when it comes to rain, because we have an indoor stadium. And then, whenever there's a drop of water on the ground, whenever they're practicing, they go inside anyway. So I figured that they wouldn't have done very well in this game. And I felt that they were going to lose. But nevertheless, I was watching this game while trying to watch Survivor Series pre-show at the same time. But I did see that there was this tag team match. Now, I don't know if they put a name to it or what, but there was the Street Profits, Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, Breezango, the OC, the Forgotten Sons, Lucha Party. They even had Imperium there, Heavy Machinery, and the Revival. And it was an elimination type match where if one member of the team was eliminated, then the team was eliminated as a whole. So first to go was the Forgotten Sons. And I really didn't have a pick to this because I was trying to figure out if there was any type of stipulation to this match, but I really didn't have a pick to this. But even if I had a pick, I would have said Street Profits, but I would have been wrong. But first to go was the Forgotten Sons. Then was the Lucha Party, Ryder and Kurt Hawkins. Then after that, it was the Imperium, which I was very shocked by, seeing as though, it is the Imperium. Heavy Machinery was next, which, the crowd booed for. Breezango after that, the Revival, the OC, which left Street Profits and Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. And Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode won. So that was a win for Team SmackDown. And so I was like, oh, that match actually counted. But I would have been wrong anyway, because I would have gone for the Street Profits. But I don't know. It's kind of weird when they be doing these type of matches with these tag teams. It showed some good moves from these tag teams, but it was just so much going on that you really didn't have a chance to really see how good a tag team can mesh. It's just this thing with WWE and their tag team division. They try to do things seriously, but they don't have as many great tag teams as you would think for them to do anything seriously. So next up, we had the Cruiserweight title on the line with Lio Rush, Akira Tozawa, and Kalisto. And I didn't realize that it was brand versus brand versus brand. I kind of figured that they all kind of threw them all together, especially since we still have 205 Live right now. But Lio Rush was actually, working for NXT because, sometimes the cruiserweights end up on NXT or one of the other brands. This match was pretty good. Of course, Akira he's pretty good, of course. Kalisto, unfortunately, because he's with the Lucha Party, he doesn't really get that many moments to shine. But he kind of did shine with this match. But in the end, Lio Rush won this match, which I kind of figured he would win and not, really change hands with the titles. I kind of predicted anyway that no one would lose their title tonight, and I was, we'll see if I was right or wrong as I go through the rest of these matches. So next up, we had the New Day versus the Undisputed Era versus the Viking Warriors, which was on the pre-show. I wasn't really shocked by it because I kind of thought about it. We do have the 2 5v5 elimination matches, so I kind of figured that they had to move the tag team triple threat match up to the pre-show to at least so they know that they have enough time to get all these matches out of the way. So I love the Viking Warriors entrance. I love that they change it up for the pay-per-view events. It still sucks that we don't get the special stages for these pay-per-views, because it still kind of feels like you're watching a Raw or a well, not really SmackDown, but more that you're watching a Raw or the former SmackDown stages instead of just something more special. But I don't know how the Undisputed Era was alive and able to really wrestle in this match, but they did a pretty good job keeping up with the Viking Warriors and the New Day. I kind of felt that the New Day will win this match, and the Undisputed Era will be the ones pinned so that the Viking Raiders are still protected. I figured that the Viking Raiders were still undefeated, but I felt that, they would get this one loss on their record when it really wasn't their fault, because I figured the reason why they put the titles on New Day close before Survivor Series is because they wanted a face tag team to win this. But in the end, we got the Viking Raiders who won this triple threat match, and so I was wrong on that end. But the Viking Raiders are still undefeated. Props to the Undisputed Era, and props to almost all of the NXT people who wrestled in these matches for still, surviving and staying alive after the takeover matches. So then we get the women's 5v5v5 elimination match. We had Team Raw, which was Charlotte Flair, Natalya, Asuka, Kairi Sane, and Sarah Logan versus Team SmackDown, which is Sasha Banks, Carmella, Dana Brooke, Lacey Evans, and Nikki Cross versus Team NXT, which is Rhea Ripley, Toni Storm, Candice LeRae, Bianca Belair, and Io Shirai. I thought it was cute that Team SmackDown wore all blue. Team Raw kind of wore red a little bit, except for Charlotte, because, she's queen. And then Team NXT kind of had a little bit of yellow in there, for us to be able to easily identify which brand each person belonged to. But like I had said, props to Team NXT for still being able to put on a match after such a brutal match at TakeOver War Games. Let's see. I did write down who was eliminated by who. I appreciated Dana Brooke. There was a part where Io Shirai, Dana Brooke, and Kairi Sane, and Dana Brooke kind of stepped back and let Kairi Sane and Io Shirai kind of duke it out a little bit, which was pretty good. These brought a lot of interesting matchups in this match. Like I said, with Kairi Sane and Io Shirai. We also had Sasha Banks versus, I think it was Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair, but I do know Bianca Belair and Charlotte a little bit. And then she tagged in either Rhea Ripley or Toni Storm, but it was a lot of cool matchups that we had in this match. First to go out, I don't know what happened, cause I believe this was still it was still a bit into the Cowboys game. So I looked away and I looked back, and I don't know what happened, but Io Shirai and Candice LeRae was on the outside looking injured. And I at first thought it was legit injury, the way that the match kind of stopped and you had people coming out. But then I saw that the refs were helping them towards the back. So I kind of figured maybe they would come back to the ring, or they were doing what they did at NXT Takeover games where Rhea Ripley's team was, down with short people, which it looked like that's what they were doing. Then afterwards we had Nikki Cross, who was eliminated. Sarah Logan then eliminated Carmella. Kairi Sane, which was a bit crazy. Dana Brooke. Then there was this spot where Charlotte and Asuka started to get into it. And then you see Asuka kind of course, go a little bit away. And then she gives Charlotte the green mist. And you see Charlotte kind of not Charlotte, you see Asuka, walks off with the green all over her face looking like she just murdered Kermit the Frog or something. And she, basically quits the match. Then that's when Charlotte gets pinned and is eliminated. Then we have Lacey Evans who went, and then I think it was at this time. Yeah, it was at this time where for whatever reason, Natalya and Sasha Banks decide to team up together to take out the rest of Team NXT. So they took out Toni Storm, which, canceled my prediction of Toni Storm being the, possibly the woman left if the other 4 competitors were, too hurt to compete. Bianca Belair was then taken out, which I was a little bit disappointed at. And then, we had Rhea Ripley, who was by herself. But a little thing I was a bit confused about was when Natty and Sasha Banks was attacking Toni Storm, that Bianca Belair nor Rhea Ripley jumped into ring to break up the pin. So I was a little confused by that because normally, you come in to break up the pin so that your partner, your team partner doesn't get eliminated. So I was a little confused that they didn't stop that. But I don't know. I don't know why they did this, but after Rhea Ripley was the last person on her team, she kind of had like this look of fear on her face. And I felt it, I don't know, it felt for me that it took a little bit away from her character, especially the way that she was on, Takeover War Games and leading up to Takeover War Games, that she kind of was like this badass, like confident woman. And I don't know, I guess they were trying to put in there the thought that she could lose this match. Probably why she had that bit of look of fear. But we see, all that's left was Natalya, Sasha Banks, and Rhea Ripley. And then as Rhea Ripley gets into the ring, then Sasha Banks, of course, turns on Natalya, pins her, and then we get Sasha Banks versus Rhea Ripley. Which was okay. It really wasn't. It was an exciting thought on paper, but it went on for a little bit. But then the thing that I was a little upset about was that then we get Io Shirai and Candice LeRae running back to the ring because they're no longer injured. And it kind of helped out Rhea Ripley a little bit. And I felt as though it took away from, of course Rhea Ripley ended up winning, but I felt as though it kind of took away from her win because, I felt like a lot of the NXT wins kind of felt like it didn't felt as strong because of the way that they won these matches. So with this women's elimination, Rhea Ripley had the help of Io Shirai and Candice LeRae to help her win. And then with the next match, I'll go over, but this was a pretty good match as far as these Team Raw, Team SmackDown, Team NXT women's elimination match. But I felt as though Io Shirai and Candice LeRae really didn't need to help Rhea Ripley to win. I felt as though we should have got just strictly Sasha Banks versus Rhea Ripley, and then had Rhea Ripley more win on her own. So then we get AJ Styles versus Roderick Strong versus Nakamura. This match was good. I mean, I felt as though this would have been the match of the night. And, of course, we had Sami Zayn who kind of jumped in a little bit. I had AJ Styles winning this match, but I was wrong because Roderick Strong wins the match. But it was the way that he wins the match that I was a little bit upset about. Nakamura, Roderick Strong, AJ Styles. This was a match on paper that should have been completely awesome. And AJ Styles had the win with this match. And unfortunately, Roderick Strong grabs AJ Styles and of course steals the pin, and he gets a win for NXT. So I think at this point it was SmackDown 1, Raw 1, NXT was at 3. Yeah, that's what it was. NXT was at 3. So I was a little bit shocked because I felt as though Raw was going to be the dominant brand, as they like to do with Survivor Series. But nevertheless, this triple threat match was still pretty good. Next up, we had Adam Cole versus Pete Dunne. And I don't know how Adam Cole was able to walk at all after this match. Nevertheless, still put on a pretty good match with Pete Dunne. My only complaint with this match is that Pete Dunne was still doing a lot of his joint manipulation, going after the fingers of Adam Cole, when Adam Cole had his whole ribs taped up, like big bullseye that Pete Dunne could have definitely went after, and instead of, going after his fingers. But there was a Panama surprise that was done on the apron that was pretty good. Adam Cole, of course, wins this match. Power to Adam Cole. Adam Cole was a superstar all this week. The fact that he pretty much died and then got resurrected to compete at Survivor Series, this man deserves a full vacation. He should be able to sit on the beach and drink whatever the hell he drinks all day long after the week he had. I mean, it's amazing that he was still able to walk after Takeover War Games, and I was just completely in shock that he still put on a good match. So after this, we had Daniel Bryan and The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, for the WWE title, and I like The Fiend's entrance with the red lights, and I actually liked the red lights with the Hell in a Cell match because I felt as though it gave it a more sinister look. But I don't get why we're getting the red lights with every single match that the Fiend has. I mean, The Undertaker didn't wrestle in the dark in every match. He had bright lights as well. I don't know if maybe they're doing these red lights to kind of make the mask look more scary or more sinister or something. Because when you see the Fiend in the white lights, not to sound mean, but his mask kind of reminds me more of Sweet Tooth a little bit versus, this sinister, scary looking mask. And I don't know if that's why they did the red lights, but I felt as though the red lights kind of took away from the match. And what I thought would have been a really good match really didn't feel like that good of a match. And I don't know, I figured it could have been that I felt as though maybe the crowd wanted to get more behind Daniel Bryan because you didn't know what Daniel Bryan was going to be. Now, he did tease that he was going to do, the yes chants before The Fiend came out last week on SmackDown. But for this match, it was kind of difficult to really cheer. Unfortunately, and like a little bit of how I felt would have probably happened is that this whole thing with Seth Rollins and The Fiend, it kind of like took a little bit of fire from The Fiend Bray Wyatt. And I think the red lights with The Fiend's matches is starting to take away from him as well. Now, of course, The Fiend was being knocked down and everything. And there was this spot where I think Daniel Bryan was going for the yes kicks. He finally started doing the yes chants. And Bray Wyatt was no-selling it. And it seemed like the crowd really wanted to get behind Daniel Bryan in Chicago. He started doing the yes chants and things like that. And everybody really got to it. And I mentioned it on Twitter and I still feel this way. I think if we got the face yes Daniel Bryan from the get-go, this match would have been a lot more interesting than what we got. It really didn't, I wasn't really that interested in this match. It was a cool, like I said, it was a cool callback to the fact that, Bray Wyatt and The Fiend wanted revenge from Daniel Bryan for what he did years ago. But I was a little bit confused because, it wasn't the same Daniel Bryan, because the Daniel Bryan back then was the Yes Movement Daniel Bryan. And Daniel Bryan was cutting the promo on SmackDown when they were in Philly, saying that the reason why he likes The Fiend is because of this whole mental instability and things like that. And so the real reason behind this match really didn't make sense to me. If Daniel Bryan was the Yes Movement Daniel Bryan, this probably would have been a much more enjoyable match, because it would have been the story of the underdog Daniel Bryan trying to go against this monster Fiend, the Fiend and things like that. And it made you want to get more behind Daniel Bryan, but you still thought the Fiend was cool. Whereas though, you're not really, you don't know what Daniel Bryan actually is supposed to be. As he said, he's no longer the Yes Movement Daniel Bryan. He's no longer the planet's champion Daniel Bryan. It's just like, it felt like it was, I'm not the good guy. I'm not the bad guy. I'm just the guy. And it's like, no, we actually liked it when you were either the good guy or when you were either the bad guy. But this whole, in between thing, mental instability, it wasn't resonating. It really wasn't making sense. And I felt as though this match kind of suffered from that, even though there was a build up to it, the reason why Daniel Bryan was getting into this match didn't make any sense. I felt as though if we got this match probably at Royal Rumble and had Daniel Bryan turn face and start to embrace the whole Yes Movement thing, this match probably would have been a lot more enjoyable, and the fans would have definitely ate it up. Even with, Chicago there, the fans really wasn't into the match like you would think they would have been. So then we get the all-impressive Rey Mysterio versus Brock Lesnar. I think this was a no disqualification match. So we all knew that Rey Mysterio was eventually going to get some type of help. But I still felt that Brock Lesnar was still going to win this match. Oh, by the way, The Fiend retained his title, of course. He had a pretty good use of the Mandible Claw here. And it seems like The Fiend is using the Mandible Claw to take opponents out so they can be pinned versus the whole passing out thing. But it seems like, I guess, Daniel Bryan is now back to face, and we'll have to wait until SmackDown to see if that's actually it. But okay, we'll see what happens then. But back to Brock Lesnar and Rey Mysterio. I felt as though that this was going to be a slaughter. I knew that Cain Velasquez wasn't going to come out to help Rey Mysterio. I knew it was going to be Dominic. And I thought maybe they would open it up for whoever Brock Lesnar may go after next will come out to help Rey Mysterio. Because I felt as though this match was more for an opportunity for whoever had a problem with Brock Lesnar to come out and help Rey Mysterio. Maybe it could have been Kofi Kingston from the New Day. It kind of would have made more sense and kind of put a close to this whole thing with him losing his title in 5 seconds. But no, Rey Mysterio was he went to a hotel room in Suplex City, and he stayed a couple of nights there because Brock Lesnar started to go to town with him. Rey Mysterio got a little bit of offense in, but that's pretty much all it was. Brock Lesnar started doing suplexes. Then he put Rey Mysterio. I think he put Rey Mysterio through a table. Took Rey Mysterio, rammed him into the ring post, and then we get little Dominic, who comes to the ring with the white towel. And I sat there and was like, are they about to pull an MJF on this? He had the white towel in his hand, pretty much pleading with Brock Lesnar to please have mercy. And Brock Lesnar grabbed the towel and threw it away. And he attacked Dominic. He attacked Rey Mysterio, and Dominic took a pretty German suplex. And Rey Mysterio pretty much got destroyed. Let me see. And I don't know, I started laughing at this point. because I knew that there was nothing that can be done to help Rey Mysterio win this title, because Brock Lesnar is going to retain it. And if Brock Lesnar was to lose, it would have been because Brock Lesnar wanted to lose, not because it was Rey Mysterio. It was more like it was Brock Lesnar. Rey Mysterio tries to jump off the top rope. He lands right on Brock Lesnar's arms, gets F5, and 1, 2, 3, Brock Lesnar is still the Universal Champion. And I started laughing at this. Poor Dominic. I don't think they mentioned he's a teenager now. He probably is a grown man, because he just took a nice suplex from Brock Lesnar. And it reminded me, if you ever watch Friday, with where Debo was talking to Craig, who's Ice Cube's character. I remembered the phrase, "Get knocked out like your father used to." And I felt as though that's what Dominic had to go through. And that was that for them. That was the end. I thought that this match would actually have been first, so that Brock Lesnar can leave out and go back to Canada to his hot Playboy wife. But, he decided to be a little bit further down on the card. So then after that, we get the men's team elimination match. Team Raw, which was Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, and Ricochet, versus Team SmackDown, which is Roman Reigns, Mustafa Ali, Braun Strowman, King Corbin, and Chad Gable, versus Team NXT. And it was actually revealed during the pre-show who Team NXT would be. And I actually thought that they did this so that there would have been surprise returns or something like that. But then after they announced who was Team NXT, I realized, oh, you guys held off on announcing just in case someone was too injured to show up. So it was actually Team Ciampa. So it was Tommaso Ciampa, Walter, Damian Priest, Keith Lee, and Matt Riddle. So I was excited that it was Walter. I didn't realize that they were doing this 5-person all come out at the same time. I guess it would have been too much to ask for individual entrances, just so I can hear Imperium's entrance, because I think it's so awesome. It kind of reminds me of Vader's Imperial March, but every time I hear it. But after I found out who it was, I still kind of have a feeling that Team NXT would win. But at this point, I'm realizing that Team NXT is a bit up. So then I was realizing, oh snap, SmackDown or Raw might win this one, just so they can continue the dominance. So very interesting term of events with this men's elimination match. First of all, Chicago loves Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was wearing a Chicago Bulls style outfit. He had the number 23 for Michael Jordan, and Chicago still booed his ass. So it is what it is. There was this little segment during Survivor Series where Seth Rollins was talking to Kevin Owens, like, "Oh, you showed up for NXT," and he's like, "I wonder how loyal you are with Raw," and stuff like that, because somebody, for some reason, even though he's not even the champion, he's suddenly the captain of all of Raw. And KO was like, pretty much, you have no place to talk about loyalty. And he did the Shield fist thing. And everybody was like, ooh, and then, that was that. So it was all a question of, is Kevin Owens going to turn on Team Raw? And that question was pretty much answered. So starting out with these eliminations, the one elimination that made me so upset was that Walter was eliminated first, which the crowd definitely hated, because the crowd was chanting for Walter pretty much the whole time that he was there. You see a bit of a smile on his face when they were chanting for him. Kind of milking it up, how popular he is. Unfortunately, you only see him on NXT UK, but I'm hoping selfishly that maybe they'll bounce back and forth between the two countries. But, I appreciate whenever we see him on TV. But yes, Walter was eliminated first, probably within like 3 minutes. Chad Gable was then eliminated next. Then after that was Kevin Owens. So if you're wondering if he's loyal to Raw, the answer is yes, because apparently he was eliminated before he can even turn on Raw. After that was Damian Priest. Then it was Randy Orton, which was a bit surprising. I forgot who pinned him. But of course he comes back in and gives, I think it was an RKO to Matt Riddle. It was somebody he gave an RKO to after he was eliminated. I believe it was Matt Riddle, because then Matt Riddle was eliminated next. And then Braun Strowman started to do his run around the ring and doing shoulder bump stuff. He did it once, and then he went to do it again. There was a bit of a standoff between him and Keith Lee that everyone was hot about. Then Drew McIntyre comes in, and they were a little bit cool about that too. And this match also presented a lot of unique matchups. The one thing I realized that we could have had was we could have had Ricochet, Ali, and Matt Riddle all in the same ring together. Like, even like Walter versus Roman Reigns would have been cool. Or Walter, Reigns, and Drew McIntyre would have been cool. There was a lot of different matchups that I would liked. It was pretty funny when we had Tommaso Ciampa and Randy Orton in the ring together, because they pretty much have that psychotic personality thing. I felt as though it was like the Spider-Man, point at each other type of thing. I did have the thought, before they announced who was Team NXT, that Triple H could have been on Team NXT with Tommaso Ciampa, and it would have been definitely the father and son type of duo. But this was pretty much cool, setups that they had. Let me see. Yeah, we had Matt Riddle. So after Braun Strowman was doing his run around the ring tackle thing, he went to do it the second time, and Keith Lee came in and they collided they really collided. I was trying to think of a metaphor, but I couldn't think of one that quickly on the spot. And then Braun Strowman went to get up, and then Drew McIntyre gives him the Claymore kick. And then apparently Braun Strowman was counted out. And I didn't know that, you could be counted out like that, because then it would have made, I believe that the announcers, going back to the women's match, the announcers never mentioned that Candice LeRae and Io Shirai was still in the match. And I'm like, well, if Braun Strowman could have been counted out, those two definitely should have been counted out and eliminated as well. But I figured it was the way for Braun Strowman, I guess, to be eliminated without being pinned. But okay, for storyline's sake, we'll just stick with that. And then we had Ricochet, who was eliminated next, and then Ali. After that, Drew McIntyre was eliminated. Baron Corbin was eliminated next, and that's because him and Roman Reigns started to have issues with each other. Baron Corbin had a bit of an issue with Ali before that as well, and Roman Reigns was kind of like stepping to Baron Corbin a little bit after that. But Roman Reigns speared Baron Corbin, and then Baron Corbin got pinned. I think it was Tommaso Ciampa that eliminated him. And then this leads to Tommaso Ciampa, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns. And the surprising thing for me was that Tommaso Ciampa was eliminated between those three. And it came down to Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, which, haven't we seen that before, ladies and gentlemen? Of course, Seth Rollins started to do his whole, come back with his curb stomp thing. The crowd started to boo him for it. But Roman Reigns, I believe he got a Superman punch in, and he eliminated Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns wins for Team SmackDown. And at that point, it was 3 versus 2 versus 1. So I was a bit shocked, because I'm like, that means that no matter what, Team NXT would pretty much come out on top. I really didn't see Bayley winning this match, but for how wrong I've been this whole time on my predictions, I really didn't feel like I could really count it out. But we get to the main event, Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler versus Bayley. Of course, starting out, Shayna and Becky Lynch was kind of eyeing each other out more than they were for Bayley. I was a little bit shocked that this was the main event. I expected the men's team elimination match to be the main event, but people started to speculate that maybe this women's triple threat match was the main event because it could have been a surprise return for Ronda Rousey. And so it kind of got me thinking too, because it really wasn't, I mean, there was a build up to this match, but it really wasn't like that big of a build up to this triple threat that it, garnered main event status. This match, to be quite honest, was pretty much lukewarm, for me, because I don't know. It just wasn't like as hard hitting as we got, for the women's WrestleMania main event. So, I felt as though maybe if it was more of a build to this match versus, the three women, kind of like running into each other. I mean, the bit of build up that we had between Becky Lynch and Shayna Baszler was pretty good, especially when Becky was going for an interview and Shayna Baszler, interrupted the interview to kind of like introduce herself properly. I liked that. Bayley, of course, felt like an afterthought. She came out, I don't know what the heck she was wearing on her head. Bayley feels like that rebel teenager that is trying to figure out who the hell she is. Everybody constantly make fun of the fact that, whenever she wears the title around her waist, it looks like, she's promoting AEW because, the E is in the middle of her Bayley and then the W from the title. So you get an AEW thing. But then she was wearing this I think it was this Egyptian type of thing on her head. And I'm saying what the hell is she wearing? I don't know what she's trying to be. She has the, let me speak to your manager type of haircut to me. But I don't know. It was very cool when she turned heel, but it feels like she doesn't really know how to handle it. I don't know if it's because she's been a face for so long and she just doesn't really know how to really pull it off in her facial expressions or something like that. But I don't know. It just wasn't really selling to me, which is a bit surprising because Bayley is teaming up with Sasha Banks, who is one of the best heels in WWE. So I don't know. But this match was pretty much, it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. I didn't get the timing for this, main event, but I think it was pretty long. It was a very long match and it kind of sucked you out of it, but in the end, Shayna Baszler won this match, which I was pretty surprised by. So NXT pretty much dominated the night. But the biggest issue I had with this match was that, Shayna Baszler won. Becky Lynch was knocked out by the announce tables. Bayley is the one who took the pin. Shayna Baszler went to, celebrate by getting up on one of the announce tables and putting up her title and stuff. And then you see Becky Lynch attack Shayna Baszler. And I'm sitting here what are you attacking her for? You lost. What is the point of you attacking type of thing? And of course, she attacks Shayna Baszler and she gets up on the table and holds her title up. And that was the shot to end the show. So my prediction was technically right, even though NXT had the most wins, with NXT getting 4 wins, SmackDown getting 2, Raw getting 1. Raw was still pretty much on top because that was the closing shot, was Becky Lynch standing tall and proud with her title. So, I don't know. I really didn't get it. I don't know what they were going to go for it from here. So people was really expecting for Ronda Rousey to come out because Becky was the one standing tall. And then, of course, you see the little logo on your bottom right hand corner that they normally show when the show is going off. So that was that. Because I had the idea. I was like, oh, if Ronda Rousey comes back, they could definitely build up a triple threat tag team match where it's Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair versus Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey versus Bayley and Sasha Banks. Because the other two horsewomen are like decades away from being ready to really put on a main event show in the ring. So I felt maybe they could have done that. Especially since they're doing this brand split. You can't really put Ronda back on Raw, if you're going to have her and Shayna Baszler do something together. So that was my prediction of the way that the, booking would go. But I have no idea what they're going to do about it. The next night on Raw, there really wasn't that much of, a talk about, this women's triple threat match. There's a rumor out there that Vince didn't really like it, which really doesn't surprise me because, the track record with Vince in women's matches. So that type of rumor really didn't, shock me, or nor did I feel like I should have been validated for the way I felt for the main event. I would have been shocked if I heard that Triple H or, Stephanie McMahon was upset about the main event, but hearing the rumor that Vince McMahon was upset about it really doesn't, I guess, surprise me. But overall, Survivor Series was a pretty good show. I was very shocked that NXT, won the brand supremacy for the night, but it makes sense because they want more eyes to be on NXT. Keith Lee, shined in this match. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot in the men's elimination with Keith Lee. Cause the way I have it written down, Keith Lee is put off to the side for his elimination. We were down to Keith Lee, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns. And it was Reigns versus Keith Lee in the end, not Reigns versus Rollins, cause, Rollins was eliminated second to last. And it was Keith Lee who eliminated Seth Rollins. And, I knew that Roman Reigns was going to come out on top because Keith Lee is kind of new to the scene for the casual crowd. And, it would have made more sense for Reigns to win versus this new person to suddenly beat Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns in the same night. So definitely a mess up with my recap there. I just happened to look down and notice I have Keith Lee listed as 14 instead of earlier. But Keith Lee had such a powerful showing with this men's elimination match. So it was very smart that they did all these with Rhea Ripley, with Keith Lee, with Adam Cole, with Tommaso Ciampa, that it kind of wants you to take a look at what's going on NXT. So I'm very interested on the numbers that NXT will be doing this week, versus AEW. Like I said, there's a lot of people who were triggered that AEW, had lost last week. And I'm happy about it. Like, let's go back and forth. All I want from both of these companies is for them to put on the best show ever every single Wednesday. And maybe once they see like, wow, we're getting all these views on Wednesdays, maybe it'll trickle out to Mondays and Fridays. But as of right now, Mondays is the days to watch wrestling. Of course, there's a lot of people who are pro AEW. There's people who are pro WWE. I'm sitting here like, just shut the fuck up and enjoy the show. We have two companies that are fighting to get our views. It's been one company fighting, well, not even fighting for our views for like the past, 20 years? It was basically, this was all we had to watch. And now we have WWE, we have AEW, we have NWA. No matter how you feel about what happened previously, we still have another company with people who just want to wrestle, who are all trying to get our attention. It is a good time to be a wrestling fan. And, you want to wave your flag, but don't put down other people who are waving their flags as well. So very interested to see how NXT numbers will do this week, versus AEW. And I am interested on how AEW will now start putting on their shows. I see that next week we're going to have Scorpio Sky versus Chris Jericho. We're going to get, MJF versus Hangman Page. And I think there's another match with, Pac and someone else. I forgot what it was. I saw some of the news of the things that was going on Wednesday. But I say bring it on. Bring it on. Let's do it on Wednesdays. And like I said on Twitter, I saw after Survivor Series that it's going to be Stone Cold Broken Skull sessions with The Undertaker. And I had to be at work at 7:30 in the morning the next day. But the Mark in me was like, I'm going to watch a little bit of this. And I have to say, it is so weird hearing The Undertaker talk without The Undertaker voice. He's such like a country bumpkin with his accent and, talking about his time in his previous promotions and how he got started. And I was sitting here like, oh my gosh. It was just like so surreal to hear him talk in a normal voice versus that deep tone voice that like shakes your soul when you're a kid. Because he's like 10 feet tall and he could take your soul and, hide under the bed and type of thing. That might have been just me. But that voice was so iconic to me. And to hear him talk with the country bumpkin, lighter voice, it was just like, I don't know. I had to turn it off for a little bit because it was just like, kayfabe is still real to me, damn it. That's The Undertaker. He's an undead wizard who can shoot lightning out of his hands and can't be killed. And here he is with the lighter voice, with the country accent. But, it's really, I did end up watching it in full. It is so amazing to hear the stories that this man had. He talked about the flight from hell. He talked about getting started, how him and Stone Cold came together, how he got into wrestling, and it's just amazing to hear the stories that Undertaker had that he's been hiding all this time because he's been, doing this Undertaker gimmick so long and he hasn't really broken kayfabe that now that he is pretty much stepping away from the ring, that he can actually sit here and tell these stories. And I cannot wait. I know it's coming, that he's going to have these autograph sessions. Or like, I heard about these small group sessions that he had. I think it was overseas. And it was a bit pricey. And I was like, hey, I'm willing to save up my money to pay a lot of money to have a small session with The Undertaker. Cause that's very rare. When I say this man never broke kayfabe, he rarely broke kayfabe. I remember it was like one time that, I think it was on the Regis and Kelly show, that he kind of broke kayfabe, but he was still like the American badass Undertaker. So I would pay money to like be in a small group to sit with him and like hear him, tell stories. Like if he ever comes out with an audio book or something like that, I mean, it would be a bit weird to hear his country accent in my ears. If he talked about it in his Undertaker voice, I'm game. But with the country accent, I'm a little bit hesitant, but I'll still buy that bitch anyway. But I'm not paying $850 for an Undertaker belt that he never wore. Okay. So I won't pay $850 for a Undertaker belt that they created that he never wore, but I probably will pay $850 to be in a small group setting and with him one-on-one and get autographs and hear all his stories and stuff. Like I will record it on a recorder and listen to it a lot. That makes me sound like a complete stalker, but you know what? I'm a mark. I'm proud to say it. Damn it, I'm a mark for The Undertaker. But on that note, that's it for the WrestleBread podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to my cowboy rant and me stalking and sounding like a complete creep over The Undertaker. I probably won't record him telling stories and listening to it at night, but nor there's like a 95% chance I probably would pay $850 to be in a small setting with him though, because I feel like that's a once in a lifetime type of thing. But let me give my shout outs anyway. Shout out to Julian Rob Bates from the Wrestling Court Podcast and AlternativeMinds.com. Keita and Jay from the Keita and Jay Show. Chris from We Talk Next Podcast. Nandel and Larry from the Half K Podcast. And Devin and Hafiz from Clark Street Wrestling Podcast. So coming up later this week, I'll do more highlights of what's coming up with Raw, AEW, NXT and SmackDown. I'm going to catch NWA. I think it's still recorded sessions. I haven't really talked too much publicly about what happened with Jim Cornette and the comments that he said and previous videos that come out about him. I put the blame mainly on NWA because this was a pre-taped show and no one went through the audio to see if anything that will pop up that will offend somebody, because you're not a completely new company, but you're being reintroduced to a new generation who may not know a lot of the wrestlers from the previous NWA. And the fact that, unfortunately, they now have this blemish on their record. I mean, there was people who stopped watching, who claim they're going to stop watching because Jim Cornette's no longer there. It's people who may stop watching because of the comments of Jim Cornette. And all I say, just continue to give the promotion a chance. They have pretty good wrestlers that are being developed to a new audience. We have Ron Stevens and Ricky, I forgot his last name, that cut really good promos. We're starting to get a bit of a women's division together. And there are other wrestlers that's in that promotion that's really trying to break their backs to really, come out there for a new crowd. And it's a small studio feel for a lot of people who like, just straight wrestling. There's not a lot of promos. There's not a lot of like big storylines. There's not a lot of, hoopla or like, pyro or like entrances and that matters. Just straight up like, this is wrestling type of thing. So I say continue to give them a chance. Hopefully NWA learn their lesson to actually grow through their video and their audio to make sure that nothing, comes out that will put them in a bad light. So I'm going to catch it this week, to kind of get to know more about their talent there. And yeah, that's that. Be sure to hop on Twitter, follow me at Jaydee Talks. Be sure to follow the podcast too at WrestleBread. I'm thinking of doing a few things starting next month, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm still trying to get a few details together. I'm not going to say exactly what it is just yet, but I have a few things to, do something for you guys, because you guys been coming along this journey for me for the past 30 episodes. So be sure to let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts of NXT Takeover and Survivor Series. And until next time, guys, peace.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Check us out at WrestleBread.com and subscribe to WrestleBread on YouTube for more breaking news and JD's opinions.